Hello car lovers. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that is kind of like, it's weird to talk about because I find often this subject becomes sort of like a moralizing subject for people. You should buy a used car, it's cheaper, you save on the depreciation, it's part of sound finance, and people who buy new cars are suckers and all that, and of course they aren't, all right? So I don't do moralizing on this channel. No one is allowed to moralize on this channel's people's personal choices, and there are many good reasons to buy a car, and I'm gonna go over them right now. And I think it will compare and contrast well for perhaps buying a used car, which some people don't consider or don't want the trouble of, and I understand all those things and we'll go over that. So the reason why we buy a new car is because of the hassle-free experience. You have a set amount to pay per month, your monthly payment, usually, and you have no repairs to do. And if there are repairs, they're usually covered under warranty, or it's the normal wear and tear, brakes, tires, oil change, air filter, things like that. So that's number one. Number two, you avoid the experience of being with a mechanic. And what I'm saying by that is that we go to the garage or the dealer, worse yet, and we don't know what's going on. We don't know cars. They could tell us anything, and you're dealing with people often who are telling you different things. When you go to one garage, they say one thing. When you go to another one, they say another thing. So you kind of have like a conflict of the experts, and this causes anxiety. And why would you go through that? The other thing is psychological. I think when you buy a new car, you do have something to show for your hard work, right? When you go to a family supper or you go see friends, you can go show them your new car. A new car is an avatar of your hard work. It kind of represents a form of success, right? You're not homeless. You're not walking in the street in despair. You're driving a new car. Now, that may often reflect your ability to borrow, but nevertheless, it is a representation of a certain success, and that is fine. Also, when you buy a new car, you get all the most recent technologies. Like cars of today are much more safer than they were 20 years ago, for example. On average, in the province of Quebec where I live, a car lease, for example, usually for compact cars, they'll start for the low-equipped ones for about $300 a month, and you can work your way all the way up to $700 a month for an SUV. So if we do the math, that's what, about $3,600 per year, and then 700 times 12 equals 8,400. So that's about how much it costs you yearly, right? Plus you get the insurance for a new car, and that's pretty much about how much things cost. I think there is an argument to be made to buy a good used car. Now, when I'm talking about a used car, I'm generally talking about a car that's not more than 4 to 5 years old and doesn't have more than 80 to 100,000 kilometers. For Americans, I guess that would translate from 4 to 5 years, 50 to 60,000 miles. And why do I say that? It's because it is possible to do a minimal maintenance up until that point and still have a good car. You can just do oil changes for the first 50,000 miles and you're going to be fine, right? You don't really have to change the transmission fluid before 4 to 5 years. You don't really have to change the other fluids before 4 to 5 years. If the antifreeze is probably still very good. And so I think that's a good place to start. And that usually corresponds to the end of lease period for most people, including yourself. More on that later. So what are the benefits of buying a used car? Well, I think the benefit is, the biggest one is the depreciation hit. So I'll give you an example. Let's take an imaginary car that sells for $40,000. After 4 years, it will be worth 15 to 20. All right. And after another 4 years, it may be worth 5 to 10. So the depreciation, or the amount of value it lost over time. So the first 4 years, if you bought a new car for $40,000 and you're selling it for 15, your depreciation over time is the difference. Over time, meaning the 4 years that have gone by since you bought it to the time you sold it. That's what we mean by depreciation. You also save a lot in terms of insurance, right? Insuring a used car is less expensive than a new car because the payout that the insurance has to make is much lesser on a used car, right? So if I buy a car, I don't know, it's worth $15,000, I get hit and it's a total loss, well, the insurance gives you back $15,000. It doesn't give you back $40,000 for a new car. Same thing if you get it stolen. Also, a couple of advantages of having a used car is that it is less of a stress for you. For example, when you go out shopping and you go out parking, you're less afraid to get dinged. It already has a few dings in it, and that's a form of quality of life if you want. It's just less stressing when you care a little bit less about your car because it's 5 years old and you just don't care. Because remember, you can always buy a used car from yourself, right? And you know that vehicle. So that's why, one of the reasons why you should buy a used car. I think what blocks people from buying used car is the risk management. They feel there's too many variables that are outside their control. They don't know about the car. They're afraid to get screwed over when they go to the garage, and they just don't want the hassle. How do you mitigate risk? The key, it seems to me, to mitigating risk is to know a good mechanic. Now, some of you might say, I don't know a good mechanic. Fair enough. But there is someone in your entourage that knows a good mechanic. All right? And if you don't know anyone who knows a good mechanic, there's probably something wrong with you. All right? Everybody knows a guy like me. I know good mechanics. I know my stuff. I am not a mechanic, but I know just enough to know what a good mechanic is. The characteristics of a good mechanic is the mechanic should be independent. That means not work for a dealer. The mechanic should have some knowledge of scan tools and interpreting live data. And the mechanic should be above all honest. And that you get to know with time. So once you have somebody who's knowledgeable and honest, you now have the tools to buy a used car. Once you've identified this good mechanic, you're going to look at about in a 10-kilometer or 6-mile radius of where that mechanic is. And you're going to go look at used car dealers. Now, this is different for Quebec, let's say, and perhaps other places. In Quebec, you can buy from individuals. However, the taxation regime here is really designed to, I guess, in this case, it's designed to hurt the middle class. I mean, or people trying to get into the middle class, because you are taxed on the value that the province gives the vehicle. So for example, you might buy a $5,000 2012 Toyota Corolla. However, the province may value it at $9,000 or $10,000, and therefore you have to pay the provincial sales tax on that book value, so to speak, which is way more than what you're paying for. So if you would have bought that vehicle at a dealer, they would have charged you the tax of the actual sale of the vehicle. However, because you're buying it from an individual, they will sell it to you according to the book value, and therefore there's no savings. You're not saving a tax at all. In fact, you're paying often more. So that 9.995% sales tax really becomes a 15, sometimes 20% sales tax. And that's the way it works here. It's retarded. However, in wherever you live, if you can save money that way, you may consider buying from an individual much more. So you're looking around for used car dealers or new car dealerships. New car dealerships often have a used car section, and you can go on their website and take a look at it and take a look at their prices and see how much they're charging, and you'll be able to make a decision. There are factors which will decrease the price of a vehicle, which will have no negative onto you. Number one, if you can take a front-wheel drive instead of an all-wheel drive, since we live in snowy conditions, having a front-wheel drive car is usually much less attractive to many people than having an all-wheel drive. So, and a front-wheel drive with good winter tires is you're going to get through winter no problem. So that's number one. Number two, if you can get it with an ugly color. I mean, when a car is not attractive, or just an ugly car, when you get an unattractive vehicle, you can often get a good price. And because those cars sit on the lot much longer, I mean, people are just naturally drawn to the prettier things that shine, right? The prettier car. The other thing you're going to look for also is if you can drive a manual transmission, those ones really sell for not a lot. And the advantage to a manual transmission is inherently more reliable. I mean, it's just simpler to fix. You have to change the clutch once in a while, and if you're not hard on it, it can probably last you 200,000 kilometers or 120,000 miles. If you can drive manual, great. I just want to cue you in on a personal experience of mine. I was looking for I was trying to lease bust, and lease busting is a form of buying a used car, which is to say you go and take over someone's lease. Somebody had an Acura TL 2013. I reviewed it on my channel, by the way. They had 13,000 kilometers after 13 months, which is about 7,000 miles. and the low payment was low because that person had got it at the end of the year, so they had already a low lease payment. They had brand new winter tires. The Acura TL is inherently not an attractive vehicle, right? In 2009 they redid it, and sales went down by half because the car was ugly, and it didn't have all-wheel drive, which everyone wants here. So I ended up getting, I believe it was $2,500 for that transfer. So I got the car, money, winter tires, and they paid for the lease. So had I had the prettier Acura, or let's say if I had gotten like a pretty BMW, I wouldn't have gotten that deal. All right, now you're gonna say it's not the same car, but it underlies my point that front-wheel drive, ugly, people didn't want it, I got a good deal. So you've identified a few cars in a 10-kilometer radius. That's when you're going to go to the dealer, right? You're going to go to the dealer and you want to make sure, or the dealer or whatever, and you want to make sure that you can get an inspection done before you buy the vehicle. I'm assuming you're buying a 4 to 5 year old vehicle. It's going to cost you anywhere from $9,000 to $13,000, $14,000. You need to get it inspected. It's a significant purchase. You're not buying a $2,000 car. And you can tell the dealer that the mechanic who's doing it is right next door. All right, it's the mechanic working right next door to where you're buying. So therefore, it doesn't stress out the dealer. You're taking the car 50 kilometers away to get an inspection. It's a few kilometers away. You get it inspected. That inspection, once again, will look at the live data, will look at the engine, we'll go drive it around, we'll tell you if it's been in an accident, we'll tell you if it's been flooded, if you live in a flood area, right? For those of you who live in the south of the United States, there's always a flood there. Once those things are settled, often the mechanic will tell you, yeah, this is a good car, or no, this is not a good car, that has to be done, or you're paying a little bit too more. Sometimes it's going to be things that are used, like for example, it's going to tell you the tires are used, the brakes are used, I think the price is a little high. You can go see the dealer at that time and explain it to him and say, listen, I like your car, everything seems fine, however, the brakes are worn, the rotors need to be changed, the tires are at 60%. This is the price of a better car if you want, and you're selling me a car that's a little bit too used. Maybe you can knock off $1,000, $1,500 off the price. Well, if he knocks off $1,500 off the price, you just take the $1,500, you get new brakes and new tires, and you don't care, right? So this is the kind of conversation you're gonna have with your mechanic. This mechanic, who's been referred to you by friends, who's trustworthy, is the assessment which counts. It's not what you think, how the car looks, how the car drives, all those things are meaningless. It is the mechanic's assessment that's first. If you want a car that drives like you want, that looks like you want, that has the color that you want, well, then you buy a new car, right? When you're buying a used car, you have to reduce your expectation. You're making a financial decision, right? Once you're done with this thing, you're not showing it off to friends. Hey, I bought this great used car for that's 5 years old. Nobody brags about that stuff. You're making a decision for yourself. You're making a decision for your personal finances. One last thing, if you are buying from in the province of Quebec, you are responsible for any liens on the vehicle. So that, I'll give you an example. If money is owed on the vehicle to a bank and you buy the car, you're automatically responsible. So there is a government agency that can tell you if there is a lien on it. In Quebec, I'll give you the acronym, you just have to Google it. It's the RDPRM. I want to make some general tips now about the used car buying experience. You have to think about the happiness the car will bring you in other terms. In a new car, the happiness was, it's an avatar of your success. It shows that you're working hard, you're moving forward. You can show it to people. It's hassle-free. It's a fixed amount every month, so you don't have to worry about it in your finances. You kind of like plug it there and you zone out, right? You know that much is coming out every month. When you're buying a used car, you have to have other criteria in your head so that you feel good about your purchase. Number one, you are saving an enormous amount of money on the depreciation. Number two, you have to think about the future. I'll give you an example. In 2002 or 2001, I bought a slightly used 1999 Honda Civic. Had I kept that vehicle would have lasted me easily 15 years. It would have had a manual transmission. It drove very well. It was very fuel efficient. At the time, it was very comfortable. If I had bought just that car and after 10, 15 years, change it, let's say, for another Honda Civic, secondhand, that I would have paid about $10,000, $12,000. Well, that would have, and I could still be driving it today, that would have brought my total car expenses to about $20,000. However, because I'm an animal and I love buying new cars and I It's my only passion. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything. I've been wearing the same clothes forever. It's my only source of financial indiscipline. Well, had I been more disciplined, today I would probably be a net asset millionaire at 45 years old. Now, I'm gonna get there. I am building wealth. However, it has a tangible impact on your finances. I mean, the car is the second biggest expense after the house or the condo or your rent. And it's huge because it's a depreciating asset. So you have to start looking at what this car brings you differently. If you look at it as a risk, as a crummy old car, it's a shit box and all that, yeah, for sure, you're going to be miserable and you're not going to buy it. However, if you can plan out your finances and look at that money over 10, 20, 30 years, 40 years even, if you're young enough, well, you're going to be so far ahead of the game. Especially if you take the difference and you put it aside, or you make increased payments to your mortgage, or you clear out your credit card debt or lines of credit. You can't have any of those, right? You can't move ahead in life if you have credit card debt or lines of credit. I mean, that is, if you want to know the path to being a loser, there it is. You just keep going that way. Hello loser. Hello credit card. Hello line of credit. And sometimes diminishing your expenses is the same as having an increased income. And that will help you become wealthier over time and achieve financial independence. And I'm kind of talking about it because you have to have that mindset when buying a used car. If you don't, you're just going to go out and buy a new one, right? Because you won't see the benefits of buying a used car, and you have to keep that in the back of your head when you're shopping. And when you have your vehicle, it's part of your ownership experience. You have to think about the money you're saving. And those are my thoughts on buying a used vehicle, specifically in the province of Quebec, but I think there are general rules everywhere for people who are dispassionate about cars. Of course, if you're passionate about cars or you love to shop, like I was telling Ross about this video that I wanted to make, and he was saying, yeah, when I bought my car, I got it inspected at 3 different garages. I shopped for it for like a year and a half. And it's like, yeah, but Ross is an animal. Nobody does that. And I didn't think his advice was useful in the context of this video, so it was excluded. I'm telling you how I shop for used cars. And I've done quite well when shopping for used cars. So it's kind of like tried, tested, and true. And others who have done it that way have had a good experience. So it's really a best practices. Of course, you might meet somebody else who has different ways of doing it, and that's fine. And that's the video. So if you have any comments or you want to share your experiences on buying used cars, you can put it in the comments below. I know when I like a video, I like to scroll down the comments to see what people wrote. And I'm pretty sure others who watch this video who like it will do the same thing and read your comment. And it might be helpful to them. Try to keep the comments helpful. YouTube is not just about watching videos, it's social. And I enjoy reading your comments. And that is it.